We're done with speaking, listening, and reading. The last subtest, it's writing. For IELTS on paper, for IELTS on computer, you have an option whether you'd like to start with writing task 1 or writing task 2. It's not as if the test supervisor will collect your work after 20 minutes for task 1, after 40 minutes for task 2. That's why we'd like to ask Ms. Stel to share her experience, what exactly happened when she took IELTS at home. Let's focus on the writing subtest this time.
Okay. So, by the time I got to the writing test, it was pretty clear that you need to follow the sequence that is allowed. So, I did the first writing task 1. And when I was done, because you're timed, then you can move on to writing task 2.
But did the invigilator inform you if you can start with writing task 2 if you prefer to do so?
Well, I actually consumed the whole time. So I had time to review my task 1 before moving on, and then it just stops, and then it's automatic that you move on to the next test.
For IELTS on paper, you get to see word count on the lower right-hand side portion of the screen. What about IELTS at home? Was this exactly the same experience that you had?
Okay, so there's a word count at the lower side of where you're supposed to be seeing your written, and that's your guide as to whether as to how much time you have left. At the same time, there's also a word count, okay, because you need to fill that up.
Well, a lot of people are asking us this question. When they take IELTS on computer, is there a feature or an option where they can check for synonyms, or is there a spell check? What about IELTS at home, writing subtest? Is there an option for you to check the spelling, or can they look for synonyms? Is that option or feature available?
Actually, there was none. So you're on your own. Um, yeah. So and that's why I think you're given some time to review. You can go back and review what you've written, so that you can correct or you can change, especially if you feel that you need to use synonyms instead of using the same word over and over again.
So a lot of people don't want to take IELTS on paper, thinking that there is a possibility to ask for synonyms, or maybe there is an option to check the spelling for IELTS on computer. But remember, this is an English proficiency examination. So what's the point of assessing your proficiency level if in the first place they are going to suggest synonyms or they're going to check your spelling? So you cannot rely on technology to help you in your examination. So that's about it for writing. So there's task 1, there's task 2, there's statistical report if it's task 1, academic. If it's general training, it's letter writing. Whereas task 2, essay writing, is exactly the same for academic and general training candidates. So that's 1 hour for the entire writing subtest. So Ms. Stel, when you took the IELTS at home, were you informed if you are allowed to log out if you're already done with the 2 writing tasks, even if you still have time left?
Yeah. Well, it wasn't really instructed as such. However, because we were instructed in the first place, if there's anything you want, you could just raise your hand. I would assume that if you want to stop already, you could just raise your hand, and then they'll close the test for you. But in my case, I consumed the whole time. I reviewed all my answers so that I can be assured that that I've given it my best rather than rush through the whole thing.
Okay, I'm just curious. So when you're done with task 1 and then you click, let's say, complete and continue, and then when you're done with task 2, can you still go back to your task 1 even if you submitted it already?
You're actually allowed to review it before you move to task 1. If you have time, you review it. But once you move to task 2, you cannot go back to task 1.
Okay. So for IELTS on paper, candidates get to choose if they'd like to start with writing task 2 or if they want to start with writing task 1. In your case, were you given that kind of instruction? You can pick between the two, whether you'd like to start with task 1 or task 2, or it has to be task 1 first?
In my case, there were no choices, so I just followed and it followed that same sequence: task 1 first, and then task 2.
Oh, that's interesting. So now, any detail that you'd like to share to candidates? Tips, test taking strategies that you found effective when you prepared for IELTS at home that you'd like to share to our online reviewees worldwide that will also help them to get the required band scores in writing?
Actually, since most of the time, again, since this test was the first time for me, I just felt that because I got so used to my reviewer sessions, um, that kind of prepared me in terms of timing, in terms of following instructions, also at the same time in terms of being able to um, remember how to do things correctly. So I would say that people, reviewers should take their review sessions seriously because it's exactly the same. So if you feel that you've aced your review sessions, for sure you will do better during the test as opposed to just doing a review session for the sake of doing it. So, and in my case, since I think I've been reviewing for quite some time, it allowed me to find a comfort zone during the whole test, and I realized that it's exactly what my it's actually what my coaches taught me, and I just remembered all of that, and I think that helped me do well.
Well, one reason why some people still choose IELTS on paper is because they feel that they are not technologically savvy enough. So, would you recommend people who are not that techno savvy to consider IELTS at home?
Um, well, actually, except for the the registration and the preparation, the whole test is quite easy. In the first place, the difficulty when you're writing on paper is that then you have to worry about keeping your penmanship clear. In this case, you're typing everything. So even if you're not good in with your keyboards, I'm sure you can type it even letter by letter. It will still come out clear, and at least your whoever is going to score your test would really see what you wrote better.
There you go, guys. We're done with our discussion of the four subtests. So in the case of Miss Stel, it's speaking that came first. And for the written exams, they followed the typical order: listening, reading, writing. Because obviously, this is a video where the reviewees or the viewers cannot interact with us. Well, if you have any questions, all you have to do is to send us an email. Or you can also send us a message to our Facebook account if you have questions or clarifications. But there's still one video left, and we're going to talk about what exactly happened after the exam, like the availability of results and so on. Hopefully, whatever we talked about in the first five videos will help you decide whether to take IELTS on paper, IELTS on computer, or IELTS at home.